Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. Bienvenidos. Buenos días. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome back. Okay, we'll give it just one more minute for the numbers to tick down, to slow down. Right. Sandra, could you please give Spanish language instruction?
Yes. Hola, buenos días a todos. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Por favor, si necesita interpretación, váyase a la caja de herramientas. Pueden ver ahí los tres puntitos donde dice MORE para más y escoja en el globo su idioma de preferencia. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, language interpretation available should pop up at the bottom of your screen. Please click the globe and choose either English or Spanish. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you. Perfect. All right. So welcome to Early Care Connection. I'm Izzy Greenberg. Today we are joined by our resident panel of experts, Ava Bermudez-Zimmerman from Child Care for CT, and Meryl Gay from the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance. We are joined this morning by Kate Reeves, who is a director at the Connecticut Project. And of course, we have interpretation provided generously by Sandra. Thank you so much for that. Welcome, as always, to everyone here, the beating heart of this show. So good morning. I hope everyone had a wonderful, restful weekend, and it is so nice to be back with you. We are going to get right into it because we're going to start with Kate, who's giving us some information on the Claim Your Earned Income Tax Credit, EITC, which is something that I personally have worked on for years. It is a worthy and amazing effort, and we'll learn more about that. After that, we're going to go into some conversation about the governor's budget, talk a little bit about the Office of Early Childhood portion. There was a lot of news around early childhood in the governor's budget, so we're going to break some of that down for you, and Meryl and Ava are going to do that. So packed morning, and we'll just get started now. Kate, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us, and I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Izzy. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that.
And I will share the presentation in the chat for folks.
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me to present today on the Earned Income Tax Credit, which I'll talk a little bit more about what that is. But as some background, the Connecticut Project launched a campaign late last year with United Way and some of the volunteer income tax assistance partners across the state to ensure that all eligible residents claim the money that they're owed through the Earned Income Tax Credit. So the Earned Income Tax Credit is one of the largest programs in the United States to help people build financial cushions. You can claim it by filing your taxes. And Connecticut is also fortunate to have both a state earned income tax credit as well that matches the federal earned income tax credit. And so it can be quite large for people. So why is this important? So the earned income tax credit is one of the largest programs, but nearly 1 in 4 Connecticut residents don't know that it exists and that they don't know that they're eligible for it. So you can backfile for up to 3 years and claim the earned income tax credit for all of those years, including 2021, which was particularly important because of the expanded COVID benefits that were available at that time. And those COVID benefits are expiring this year. And so 20% of folks, it's about 45,000 people throughout the state, are eligible for this and haven't claimed it. And those are 2021 numbers. And so we're trying to get the word out to make sure that people file for this, what essentially is estimated to be about $150 million that's still on the table for people in tax credits. So the eligibility is really simple. There's actually two main criteria. So one is that you have to have earned income and it has to be less than $63,000. And second, you have to have a valid social security number. We have a list of folks who typically have not filed in the past. This is based on data provided by the Department of Revenue Services. And it's people living in rural areas, self-employed folks, people with disabilities, and or potentially grandparents raising grandchildren, and those who've experienced some change in their status. It could be their marital status, it could be a financial status like an employment, or parental status. And I think it's just important to point out who may be eligible, but maybe don't know that they're eligible, and or maybe they are not required to file taxes, but might still be eligible for this credit. You can file for free. Everyone can who makes less than $63,000. There's free tax sites throughout the state. I will send out, I'll make sure that that's included in the presentation too. And anyone who is eligible can file and receive the earned income tax credit. And again, you can backfile for 3 years. So we need your help in getting the word out about this. So we will make sure that we share the information. We have flyers, we have media kits, both in English and in Spanish. We're encouraging you to talk to anyone, your clients, other folks about this credit. And we have a landing page on our website where people can check to see if they're eligible and can make an appointment. So thank you so much for getting the word out about this really important credit. Lots of money, $150 million is on the table for folks, and it expires April 15th. So please get the word out.
Kate, there's
And
one
I'll
question.
open it for questions. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yep. One question was, is under 63,000 net or gross?
Gross.
Okay, thank you. Any Meryl or Ava, any questions before we move on? Oh, and is this for families or center owners?
So both, both families primarily, but we are asking center owners to please get the word out too.
Great. Meryl, did you have any questions?
Saying don't jump to the assumption that center owners are making more than $63,000 a year, because
Fair.
there are some
Yes.
who aren't.
Yes.
And so this is something to talk to your staff about and to talk to your parents about, that there is free help with filing income taxes, and make sure that you claimed your EITC, particularly during the pandemic when it was bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And someone here says, if I received a grant, does that money count as earning?
It does not. Grants do not. It would only be money that you're earning through like what you consider revenue.
Great. Ava, any questions?
Not a question, just a point of clarification that for anyone listening to this and is also following some of the legislation that we're trying to support here in Connecticut, this is different than the child tax credit legislation that's happening this year that we're advocating for. And if Kate, if you want to jump in, because I know CT Project is also leading that with other partners, then.
Yeah, we absolutely support that effort. Yes, so yeah, and I should say they are two different credits. Folks might be eligible for both, and the earned income tax credit has about 20% of folks who are eligible who haven't filed. About 10% haven't filed the CTC, so the child tax credit. So both, you could be eligible for both. There was also an expanded child tax credit in 2021, so it's definitely worth checking it out and seeing if you're eligible for those.
All right. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Have a great day. And folks, there's information in the chat. Kate, if you are still here, or if Coralise maybe, somebody's asking if they can have a phone number to reach out if needed. Okay, there's information in the chat. with an email. So if you don't get an answer to that question, you can email info@ctproject.org. There's also the presentation there if you needed to look that over. The website, ctproject.org/EITC. And the recording of this with all of these files will be posted at earlycareconnection.org in the next roughly 24 hours. As always, you can hit subscribe and you'll get notice when it's posted. Okay, and there's the phone number if someone needed it. Great, thank you so much. All right, so moving on. Someone did ask if we're discussing the regs today, and my understanding is that OEC wasn't quite ready to present on that yet, but that they don't go into effect until April. So we still have a little bit of time. Anybody have a little bit of an update on that before we move on to the budget? No update, right?
Yeah, we had a bit of a miscommunication about what we were asking OEC to present on, and I thought they were
This
gonna
week.
do
We've been asking
this
for
week,
regs
yeah.
for months.
Right. We've been asking, yeah. And they thought we were asking about coming on to talk about the governor's budget again. And we thought we were asking about regs. And then when we finally cleared it up, they're like, oh, we're not ready to present on regs yet.
Yeah, no, they're not. And right. So we've been trying to get that for a few months. So, all right. This morning we are going to be, someone is asking, are you 100% sure they don't go into effect until April? Will there be a grace period to bring everyone into compliance, especially the 18-hour health class? And someone else is saying the new regs in place for April. I thought they changed last fall and went into effect October 2024.
I don't know the answer to that.
Great, we will. Actually, if anyone from OEC is here and has the answer to that and wants to put it in the chat, amazing, because there may be some misunderstanding about what we're talking about, and we certainly don't want to give any wrong information, which is the wonderful thing about having this community, is that it doesn't rely on the three of us to be the experts on everything. You guys truly are the experts. So we'll get the answers to those things and figure this out. So regs went into the ones, these are all already in place. Maybe, are we talking about the same thing? Or are we talking about something different, guys? Some started sooner than others.
Well, there are two changes happening. There are Care for Kids regs and then licensing regs. So rather than us confusing anyone,
Yep.
please let's wait for OEC to come on and do a presentation on changes that they've made.
Great. Okay. So we have been asking for that, just to be clear for folks, for months. And so hopefully we will be able to confirm that they'll come on soon. We would love that. You would love that. I know there's a lot going on, but hopefully we can get that lined up quickly. And it is not for lack of trying, I think, on anyone's part. I do see that people are saying that there's some things don't take effect till April, some October. So there may be some confusion on our part there. So we'll confirm before we make things even more complicated for you all. Someone did just get cited for them, so apparently they are in effect. See, we don't even know what's in effect right now. Exactly. There's a lot of confusion here. We'll work to get clarity on that. I don't want to commit, but we'll work to get clarity on that. Okay, moving on from that confusion, let's talk about the state budget, where there's always to say there's clarity. Their numbers on a page and they're very, very specific. So in that way, yes. Meryl, would you like me? Let me just mention to folks that Commissioner Bai was on the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance call last week, and she did a pretty comprehensive presentation on the universal pre-K portion of the state budget that was just proposed by Governor Lamont last week. It felt a little redundant to have that also here, since I know so many of you were there. But what we are going to do, in case there were folks who couldn't be there, we're going to, Meryl's already done it, share out the presentation to you all. You can watch her presentation, and then we have the slides in English and Spanish as well. And so we'll put that in. You guys can watch that. You can look over the slides. And if you did miss it, you will be up to speed. We're also going to talk about it here, though. We're going to talk about our response and our understanding and what it means for the community. So I guess that's where I'm going to introduce Meryl and Ava to kind of fill you in. So Meryl, we'll start with you.
Okay.
And I'll share the slides in the chat.
Okay. I think Vanessa may have already done that.
Okay.
So the governor proposed universal preschool. That is significant and gradual. So it's significant because it's the first time that the governor has been willing to step around the fiscal guardrails that he's been a big champion of by saying that we would transfer some of the surplus to an early childhood or actually a universal pre-K trust fund or endowment, I think is the word he used. And that we would do that for several years before we start ramping up new funded pre-K slots in 2028. So we're working now on the budget for 2026 and 2027, biennial budget. And then in the next biennial budget would be when we would start to draw down money from that endowment to ramp up new funded slots. The proposal is to do a combination of Smart Start slots in public schools and early start slots, what used to be school readiness and CDC, but all of the new slots would be pre-K slots. Let me just share this is the presentation. Let me see if I can do this here. All right. Are you seeing this? Okay. Let me just scroll through to a slide that I want to talk about. So there's talk about a new enrollment system that would help parents find available spaces. And then this is being the numbers guy, this is the one that I look at. This is a very complicated chart trying to show the growth in preschool slots. Let me just explain what the colors are, especially for those of you looking at your phones trying to figure out what the heck this nonsense is. The orange at the bottom are 1,580 slots that are currently in public schools, either funded by the school district or through Smart Start. And those are, lots of those are special ed pre-K slots. Others are just district funded pre-K. The kind of maroon color there are the OEC school readiness and CDC slots, now all called early start, and federal Head Start slots. That's 25,747. And then the little tiny green sliver at the very top that you probably can't see if you're looking at it on a phone is 429 slots that are existing funded early start slots that are being reallocated this year to different programs. And then in the next fiscal year, you still have the same number of funded public school slots, the same number of funded early start slots. And then there's this reallocation of more slots, 1,029 slots. That I think is the RFAB for those folks who are waiting for the recompetition of slots that have been moved from one place to another. In 2027, which is the second year of the biennial budget, there would be an addition of 1,500 early start or Smart Start slots in public schools. In FY28, there would be an increase in, let me just see if I can make this bigger, an increase of new early start slots, 1,349 of those. And then in FY29, that number would grow to 3149. So an additional couple thousand slots there. And then when you get out to 2030, it jumps up to 6,700. And then in 2031, it's 9,100. And by 2032, they're saying there'll be 10,949 new slots. It's also saying that it's not represented in the graph is that they're anticipating that 7,500 of the preschoolers in public school pre-K are going to move to school day. I have not yet figured out where the funding for that is coming from. It may be through the educational cost sharing grant formula. I'm not sure how that's getting paid for, but that's their phase in to what they're calling universal preschool between now and 2032. These 10,949 slots are early start slots, which means that they are like the school readiness and CDC slots that are now contracted with providers. So there'll be a request for proposals, and programs can submit to join the program if they're not already providers within that. And that would mean that they would get funding so that they are able to provide care to families with annual incomes less than $100,000 with no parent fee. And between $100,000 and $150,000, it would be a parent fee capped at $20 a day. It would also include in that deal paying your staff on a compensation scale, but that would be paid for with the per slot cost so that you're getting enough money to do it. And that obviously will have impacts on the rest of the industry because it will raise wages for early educators. And so that's going to create some upward pressure on other programs. It will also be very attractive for parents to go to a center that is part of Early Start, where they're going to not have to pay a parent fee if they're under $100,000. The idea of this is that they're going to move from the current system where they don't pay enough through Early Start for a program to actually function, that they have to add in Care for Kids. They're going to switch from that to getting to the point where they are paying providers through Early Start the full cost of quality care, and Care for Kids money would then be available for wraparound services, summer programs, and infant toddler care. So what the governor's deal is on this is that for families under $100,000, they would not have a parent fee for school day, school year care. But if they wanted wraparound care to, get them till 5:30 when they get home from work, or weekend or summer care, that would be where they would turn to Care for Kids for help. That's the model with all of this. And I'm sure that there are lots of questions. We had 50 or 60 unanswered questions that we sent on to OEC after Commissioner Bai's webinar. But I would suggest listen to the webinar, think about your questions. We will be, working on trying to get OEC to come on and answer some of those questions after you've had a chance to digest what's in this presentation. I think you probably heard that we've talked about most of the early childhood bills this year going to the Children's Committee for their public hearings. The governor's Early Start or Universal Pre-K proposal is the exception. It is going to the Education Committee. As soon as we have any more information about when that's going to be, we'll let you know. And all of this, I'll switch to another slide where I'll look at the actual governor's budget and share the slide, the links to those. So let me switch. Okay, are you seeing the early childhood budget now? I can't hear you, Izzy.
It's small.
We
If you-
can see it.
Okay,
yeah, if you
let me make it
just a
bigger.
little bit bigger. That's better, thank you.
Okay. So this is just the page extracted from the big budget book, and I'll share the link on this in a sec. But it talks about what are the changes. So there's a little bit of a change in that first line for OEC staff salaries. There is 55.8 million, which is to annualize the cost of living increases for staff that in funded programs. There's 35 million to provide the rate increase for Care for Kids that's in the union contract, and to make the adjustments to switch over to paying providers in advance as opposed to retroactively. When that change is going to happen, I'm still trying to get clarification from OEC. There's funding for a year 5 of an early childhood development initiative in 2027. So I'm not quite sure how that's getting paid for in this coming year. There's a reduction in reduction to adjust for current staffing levels. So that means that there are some positions at OEC that are empty that are they're taking out of the budget. There's some money to increase funding for birth to 3 providers through a Medicaid rate increase, and they're taking out this sort of ad hoc adjustment that they had made, the general administrative payment in FY27. For early start providers, there's an $8 million to provide a rate increase in this coming year. And then that's $6 million is for the birth to 3 rates that I mentioned. There's $3 million to maintain Smart Start. They had expanded Smart Start with pandemic money, and they right now don't have funding in FY26 for that. They put it back in 2027. I think they are looking hard to try and figure out how to make sure they don't shut down those Smart Start classrooms in public schools only to reopen them the next year. And then there's some money for the Sparkler program. The weird thing here is that if you go back to this, there's FY26 and FY27. FY26 is a much tighter budget year. There isn't much money under the spending cap. So to the extent that they can, they pushed off expenses into FY27. But that could create a gap in services unless they figure out how to either roll over some unspent money this year or do some other gimmick that's going to fill that hole. Let me just see if there's anything else here. So there's some one-time funding for universal home visiting and some funding for the Tri-Share program, both in the second year of the budget. And then they transfer funding for the Capital Child Development Center from legislative management over to OEC. And then, so then you've got this whole summary of stuff, and I will share this link for everybody to have in just a second. And I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat. So
yep,
while you guys sort through it, what I would add to the budget in total, they're adding, according to their own calculations, they're adding 115 million more new dollars, in comparison to the last budget year. And then I would also add that when they presented an expansion to Care for Kids slots, if you guys remember to like 6 months ago, and I'm sure you got calls from parents jumping for joy about how they were capping the cost of care to 7% of a parent's annual income, while simultaneously providers, owner-operators were concerned that it was misrepresented, right? So if you think back to that press conference 6-7 months ago, by the governor and the commissioner. And in that press conference, they talked about expanding slots for Care for Kids, taking ARPA money. So here we are looking at the budget, and they're sticking to what they said. So their presentation really hasn't shifted with how they're going to use ARPA money. You know, they're expecting that 35 million of the ARPA investment is going to go into Care for Kids to make sure that they're touching base those new slots and capping the cost of care at 7%. There's also $250,000 that I saw that are going to go into the parent cabinet. They're making it a priority to have parent voices and continue that program as well. So other than the universal pre-K, call it presentation or addition, everything else seems to be ideas and conversations that they've had in the last year or so and have been slowly rolling out. The bigger question mark when I look at this, and obviously we need more time to do a deeper dive out of the 311 pages this document has, is where's the money coming from? So if the ARPA money is going to expire, they're investing it on Care for Kids expansion, there's some initiatives, there is additional programming that they want to really pay. And once the money runs out, the existing money runs out, it seems that they're really depending on the legislature to kind of bail them out. But if the legislature is going to bail them out, you know, there is no such thing as magical money. We have, as we presented on these calls, the fiscal constraints, these fiscal guardrails that secure how much money you could use in a year and where the money's going to. So I think the biggest question mark out of this whole budget is, where is this magical money going to come from, and how are you going to make it accessible in order to pay for some of these projects that OEC lines out or wants to do?
Thank you. We've got a ton of questions. Are you guys comfortable with me starting that?
Yep.
I do agree with your assessment, Izzy, in your feedback on the chat, that some of these questions we will do our best, but they're not necessarily directed to us. You know, some of these questions are more for the Office of Early Childhood, which we promise we will have back on for a conversation specific to universal pre-K. We just wanted to get the ball rolling because universal pre-K presentation just happened, and a lot of the audience members on here today wanted to know what's going on, right? So please look at the presentation that Mayor and Vanessa put on the chat. Take a look at it, have your questions ready. If by the presentation that you saw, you still don't have clarity, or if today we can't answer it, just know that we're tabling those additional questions and curiosities for when we have OEC back on.
Yeah, and so if questions are in the chat, I'm assuming they are for the community. If they're questions for the panelists, please put them in the Q&A, and that's how I will be able to parse it. Okay, so there's a lot of questions in here about infants and toddlers. What this will mean for them. This will not mean spaces for infants and toddlers. What's the plan for infants and toddlers? I don't know if there's anything you guys can talk about at all. Is there a plan for infants and toddlers at all? Are they included?
No.
Should
I be that abrupt, Meryl? Is that too harsh?
No, basically the only thing that we heard was that they would be increasing the wages for infant toddler teachers in early start programs, along with the wages for pre-K teachers. But there's not any expansion of funded infant toddler slots in the governor's UPK proposal. They are, okay. Everybody's asking to be an editor. I'm not letting you edit the governor's budget proposal. I'm letting you view it. So I'm just.
Is that the link that you just showed?
Yeah, the link that I put in there.
Someone's asking for the budget breakdown that was just shown. Is that the one that you?
The second one.
That's the second.
No, the first. It should be the first one. Is the budget with the narrative? I think. Let me just make sure that.
Okay,
And the one I put in before Meryl did is the everything for those who wanted to see the everything budget, the full budget.
yep, it's just saying that people don't have access at all, Meryl, so if you
All
could
right,
just
let me
do it
try
in
and figure out
access.
what the heck's going on with this.
All right, well, while you do that, let me keep asking some questions. All right, so there's questions about wage scale. Are wages going to be tied to qualifications, bachelor's or associates, other things? Will you have to be accredited? Is there anything in there that helps understand those factors?
The current Early Start program requires programs to be accredited within 3 years of getting funded, and there are requirements for staffing credentials, which basically require you to have an associate's degree teacher in every classroom under the supervision of a BA teacher, with the ideal of having a BA teacher in every classroom.
With just a caveat on that, with certain exceptions for family-based providers who are entering the program.
Real quick, so I had answered this, but I think wrong now that I'm looking. The blue section, that's early start or smart start?
The blue section in the middle of the graph is early start. The blue section at the top of the chart is early start.
I'm sorry, the middle is smart start, the top is
Yeah.
early start?
Yeah.
Okay, I had not parsed those out, so I'm just fixing fixing that in the question. Apologies to whoever I answered incompletely. Okay. Pay scale address parity. Does the pay scale address parity with public school teachers and factors in that many early childhood staff work full year versus school year? Is there any consideration for that you've seen?
That's a question that we need to get answered from OEC.
All right. Is the plan to eliminate partial day pre-K?
I think they're strongly, trying to move that way.
All
The
right.
funded slots would be school day, school year.
As much as this funding is great for families, won't this hurt daycares by us losing pre-K kids to the free schools spots being offered?
So I will put on my OEC cap here, and hopefully channel what they would say to that question. Is the attempt is creating a system that doesn't undermine family child care or center-based care, and gives an opportunity for both types of businesses to use this program and maintain their client base. Is that what Meryl, the most political answer?
They are trying to grow the system so that more programs can be subsidized, which would mean that private providers who have not been subsidized in the past have the opportunity to join the system. There will not be a requirement that you have to join the system, but you will certainly face some pressure from subsidized programs, whether they're in the schools or community programs that have subsidy, because parents will want to enroll for the place that's free or cheap.
To be clear, if we don't apply and get approved for state funding, parents will have no subsidy and centers will have no assistance to meet dramatically increased wages?
So Care for Kids will still be there for the unfunded programs. For families who qualify for Care for Kids. But the idea is to try and grow a subsidized pre-K system where many families get that for free, whether it's either in the public schools or in a community program that is part of the Early Start program.
I personally want to just rewind real quick and say to everyone that this is a proposal.
Yeah.
And a reminder that if you love this, or if you hate this, or if you think it could use improvement, that the entire legislative session process is built for you to have input in how and if this gets passed by the legislature. So just a reminder, none of this is set in stone. This is a proposal, which we will tell you when there are opportunities for you to comment in public hearings. You could be reaching out to lawmakers now if you love it or you hate it. And so I just want to remind everyone that this is a part of this legislative process of seeing whether this thing gets passed or not. But so we're just reporting out today on what we know of this proposal that the governor and the Office of Early Childhood had put together. Okay.
This proposal also is not a proposal for everyone. It's not a proposal to help parents of any income. It is specifically capped for free for families whose annual income is $100,000, and then $20 a day for families who make between $100,000 to $150,000. So many of you know that the cost of living here in Connecticut is very expensive. The minute you put a couple kids into that equation, $150,000 between you, a spouse, a partner, however that dynamic works, and 2 kids, things are still hard.
Yeah. If everyone could just refresh, by the way, I think sometimes if you try to look at something, it'll say denied. You may have to just like close it out, click it again, refresh. That sometimes helps. All right. So is the expectation that an ECE program offer full day care, but the public funding is just for school day? Do children have to switch to a different provider for care after 3 p.m. or is it just that they have to pay for it differently if you're willing to offer it to them?
Right. They would just pay for it differently. But so instead of paying, $250 a week for care for the whole day, maybe they're paying, 50 or 60 or 70, whatever. I'm not sure what the number would be for the 2 hours of extended day or 3 hours of extended day until mom or dad gets home from work.
So, okay, let me just rewind again and say that to me, tell me if I'm wrong, you guys. To me, what I see here is that the governor is trying to solve an education problem. This is a kindergarten readiness problem that he's focusing on. This is so that kids get to kindergarten. Maybe there's more equity in their learning, that they're more prepared to compete with kids who've been in full-time care. But this is not a childcare solution, that if you are a working parent, the subsidy is really for the education component, or what the governor sees as the education component, which is school day, school year. If you need care for childcare, which is full day, full year, even if you're below 100,000, you'll still have to pay the difference between the sort of education component and the childcare component. Am I understanding that right?
All right, I was trying to type at the same time.
Is there a difference between, I'm breaking down that I see the governor's proposal as an education solution, but not a childcare solution. That it solves for school day, school year, education, kindergarten readiness. But if you're a parent who needs childcare, there's still going to be a gap. Even if let's say you make $99,000 a year, you'll get that sort of education component covered for free, but you still have to pay your childcare portion, which is after school day or summer.
Correct.
Or before school day.
Right.
So if you drop your kid off at 7 and you pick them up at 6, which I know a lot of families do, or if you work non-traditional hours and you need childcare for second shift, your kid can go to their education program for free, let's say 9 to 3, but you're still going to have to pay for your childcare, especially if it doesn't overlap at all with the education timing. Is that accurate? Am I breaking that down right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. I would love to see the governor talk about this, not as, not as a childcare solution then, and as an education solution. Because that to me feels like it's really disingenuous to parents who think that they're going to get their childcare for their 3 and 4-year-olds for free.
Yep. You want to work through some of these other questions here?
I just needed to understand that because that's been on my mind and really bothering me, that confusion. Okay. Will all towns be eligible for early start or just those that already receive it?
It is intended to expand to other communities. There is in the early start bill that was passed last year, there's a provision for creating a local governance partnership, which is kind of like the school readiness councils that used to exist in the school readiness communities. Its primary purpose changes somewhat in that it is to do a community needs assessment. and including like surveying parents to figure out, do parents want school day? Do they want part day? Do they want full day? What is it that parents need in the community? And that then those needs assessments will get fed into the OEC allocation process, which is a bit of a black box, of figuring out where they're going to move slots to, or where they're going to put new slots. And then they'll, through a request for proposals, they will look for childcare programs and schools to contract for those new slots.
And is there any mandate for those local assessments to include people who might work out of town, but whose children go to a childcare center in town? Or is it really for the needs of the people who live in that community only?
Well, we are no longer doing grants to school districts to fund the kids in their towns. We are contracting with childcare programs to provide care. So I don't think that there will be the same requirements that used to exist originally in the school readiness program, that it be just for the people in that community. There was some leeway that was created over time that allowed towns that had empty slots to allocate them to people in neighboring towns who maybe were commuting into Meriden or wherever to get a school readiness slot. But all of that's changed with the switch from a grant to a school district to subcontract for care in the community to serve the kids in that community to contracted slots.
Yeah, but I'm not asking for if they're eligible to use the slots. I'm asking when Beth said that they were going to have the local groups do the assessment of what their community need was, and that from that need, that's how they would determine kind of what that community would implement. So I'm not talking about the implementation. I'm asking on the assessment side, how will they know? Will they take into account people who work? Is there any mandate from the state that they take into account people who work and have their children in care in that community but don't live there?
I don't think they've gotten to the point yet of coming up with guidance for local governance councils to do their needs assessments. That's something we can talk to them about.
No present. Yes. Okay. It wasn't in the presentation. Thank you. Okay. Is this a mixed delivery format, which includes community-based providers? Who is I guess that's liaison agency, the district or the state agency?
So OEC would be contracting for new providers in the Early Start program. It will not be the local school district that you would go to, like in a school readiness. It's not this. The school district doesn't hold the money for the community. It's at OEC.
All right. Is the increase in Early Start for programs that are school day, school year, 10-month? We did not get the increase this past year. This is a proposed increase.
I'm trying to figure out that question a little bit.
Okay, we can move past it if we don't understand it well enough. Will the public schools need to be NIAC accredited and or licensed through OEC?
They are currently license exempt. Some public schools have gotten NIAC accredited. I don't know that that's a norm. And I think that's a question to ask OEC.
And my understanding is this proposal is not just for public schools. This is basically for anyone who's in the program.
Right.
You'll get funding from the state. If a family is below $100,000 a year, you get funding from the state for the 9 to 3 hours roughly. And Georgia actually said, unless you apply for the full year grant. And I don't understand that piece. So maybe you can help me understand it. But also, it doesn't mean that the kids have to go to the public school for this. It means they could come to you if you're in the program, and then you just get paid by the state from 9 to 3, and then you charge the family for hours that go beyond that. Is that accurate? It's not like they have to go to public school and then they only come to you 3 to 6.
So in school readiness, there were school day slots and full day slots. How this is all going to work is I'm not entirely sure. Maybe there's one of the early start providers who's gotten some guidance on that so far. But since I'm not running a program, I have not gotten all the answers to this yet.
Yeah, and if folks know the answers to these things, you're welcome to put them in the chat. That is the right spot for this. Was there a parent education piece presented?
Parent education piece.
Don't think I'm understanding that question. I hoped you did.
So, I mean, there is a whole effort around a parent portal that would make it easier for parents to find slots in the subsidized programs so that we could keep them full. Part of the issue is that in the last couple of years, there have been a bunch of programs that have been under-enrolled. And OEC doesn't want to see that continue.
Georgia clarified, by the way, Beth said at the Alliance meeting that you could apply for a full day, full year. Thanks, Georgia. I don't know how many people will be eligible, if everyone or if every program would be, but that is helpful. A question here, pre-K teachers currently have to have the pre-K special ed certification. Will this change? Aren't we going to need to have more teachers for typical students? And how have school districts reacted to this proposal?
So pre-K teachers in public schools who are working with special children who have IEPs, probably need to have that special ed certificate. Most early educators in community programs are not certified teachers. So they're not, that's how the public schools run their special ed pre-K programs. Is they've got their own set of rules to do that. I know that there is a real push to try and make it so you don't have kids on buses back and forth, not getting any programming or any preschool because they're sitting on a bus for a long time. And that we want to get away from the problem that I saw when I was in New Britain and joined the Board of Ed there, that we were serving the special ed kids with 2 mornings a week of special ed pre-K, and they weren't getting pre-K anywhere else. So the idea is to try and get all of those kids who might have only been getting a couple mornings of pre-K into a school day, school year program where their IEP services were being delivered there in the school. And it's the minimum of disruptions for those kids.
Just a reminder for everyone, you can both upvote questions if you like them, but you can also comment if you do know an answer to something that we don't, or if you have clarifying questions or comments, you're welcome to comment on the questions as well. If I currently have school day, school year, school readiness slots in my program, will this proposal, I think they're assuming that funding will likely go to the town's public school pre-K. Will this eliminate the choice involved currently with school readiness grants? How will this affect kind of the current school readiness atmosphere?
So Commissioner Bai tried to go to great lengths to talk about this as building on the existing system as opposed to replacing the existing system. I know she understands all of your concerns about the public schools, coming in and gobbling up all the preschoolers. There are limits to how much space public schools have, especially if they're offering school day programming as opposed to a morning of pre-K and then an afternoon that enables them to serve twice as many kids with, the same number of teachers and classrooms. All of this, still needs to be sorted out. There are clearly unintended consequences anytime there's big change, and that's what we all need to be working on and making sure that when the local governance councils start doing their work, that you're engaged with those and are making sure that folks who are working on that needs assessment are also accounting for the needs of infant toddler care in the community, and that if all the preschoolers go off to the public schools, there won't be any infant toddler care because you can't afford to run your businesses on just infant toddler care. But we've gone a long way from the, like Boston public schools or approach where it was like, okay, we're just going to put all the 4-year-olds into the public schools, and the heck with the community programs. This is trying to build on the mixed delivery system of that we had with school readiness and CDCs before they became really stark.
Yeah, and I will say, as a parent of now older children, but having consistency in their care, that I dropped them off at one place when they were 6 months old, it was the same place when they were 2.5, it was the same place when they were 4. That is a lifesaver, I think, for a lot of parents who might be insecure first-time parents like I was. And, I think there's something to be advocated for there, to be able to allow for children to be in the same place for that entire time as well. And I know that's on the local level to ensure that happens. But to me, that seems important also. Will family child care providers be required to have certification or formal education to join the program?
I know that OEC is working to make sure that there are more intermediaries so that family child care providers can participate in this. I don't know what the educational requirements will be, and how long folks will have to achieve those. I think that's a good question for OEC.
If schools don't collect the $100 a week for the above $100,000 a year families, but we need the income, how do we compete for families?
That's a good question. Public schools, in some public schools, they are collecting fees from parents under current school readiness rules, or now early start rules. In others, they're not. It depends on the local budgets and decisions made by your Board of Education.
Georgia is chiming in that they will need a BA. Is that your understanding? Yeah. Okay, let's see. Will full day? Yeah.
I'm just like, a family child care provider will need a BA when an associate's degree teacher can be the head teacher in a community program.
Georgia.
When is the deadline on that?
Georgia, I don't know if you're willing to join to give a little more clarity on that, but I'm going to allow you to join if you're able to.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi. So I would advise everybody, I didn't have a chance to do it, but I'm going to advise everybody to go to the OEC's website. I'm going to go there and I'm going to drop the link in the chat. There is guidance on the OEC around the new regulations about what is required for state-funded programs. Let me put that in the chat.
George, is this the new regulations that have already been passed, or the proposal from the governor?
The new regulation that's been passed is the one that's going to be in effect come July 1, 2025. And there is brand new guidance for QSM. They're still trying to figure out what QSM, they're still trying to figure out what the QSM is going to be ultimately for family childcare providers. But as of July 1, 2025, family childcare providers will still be required to have a BA. I believe there's a supervision aspect of it, and I have to confess, I didn't get a chance to get clarification around the supervision aspect. So if anybody from OEC is on the line, they can do that. My understanding is that there is no more requirements for all teachers in the classroom in a center-based program to have a bachelor's degree. You just have to have a designated teacher or your lead teacher have a bachelor's degree, and there's no longer a 100% requirement. There is only a 60% requirement. So, yeah, so there is guidance, but I don't think it's final guidance. from the OEC. But for right now, as of 2025, July, what the guidance is basically saying is, my understanding is that family childcare providers need to meet the QSM of a bachelor's degree. But there is a supervision component of all of those degree requirements, and there is a gradual pathway for people to get there. So if people do not have the degree right now, they can be enrolled in a degree program, and as long as they're demonstrating progress, and what OEC deems as acceptable progress is 9 early childhood education credits each year, you will be deemed eligible to, you will be deemed as meeting the QSM. So OEC does have a gradual phase-in of the bachelor's degree. So what we have been advising our family childcare providers to do is to go to school and get on a pathway, and you have the career pathway of a CDA, then an associate degree and a bachelor's degree. And as long as you're working towards that credential, then you will be deemed in compliance with the Early Start grant. Now, of course, we know all of this can change with legislation, but this was legislation that was passed last year, I believe.
Thanks, Georgia.
No problem.
Right.
And
That's-
Izzy, can I just share with just quickly
Yeah.
that the Early Start grant proposal actually advantages community-based programs for exactly what you just said, Izzy. Parents are not going to disrupt their care if they have been in a community-based program for 3 years. They're not going to opt to go into the public school for school day, school year, which is about 6 hours, 42 hours a week, when they can remain with their trusted, beloved care provider. Parents have said over and over again, the most important thing for them is that they feel comfortable, that they trust their provider, and that their child is safe. So if people are worried about the public schools having unfair advantage, they actually don't. They have structured this in a way. My understanding is that the majority of these slots are going to be in community-based programs. Family childcare providers are going to be prioritized in this. Beth has said that over and over again. So family childcare providers will be advantaged in the RFP, which I think we need to switch that to a RFA process to make it not be as competitive. And once those programs, those slots are situated in community-based programs and school-based programs, I don't know any parent that needs full-time predictable care that's going to choose the public schools over their trusted community-based providers. So I do want to at least put out there that our assessment, our analysis from Circle is that this greatly advantages community-based programs versus in the urban setting versus community-based programs, but versus a public school. There is a danger for community-based programs in suburban settings where parents have more flexibility around childcare issues. So you may have a suburban area where parents don't necessarily need more than 6 hours worth of care. They may have nannies, they may be able to be flexible in their work. Those are the communities where you're going to see the public schools be prioritized over a community-based program, especially if it is a good public school system in those community-based programs. But I do want to answer that angst for the community, Izzy and Meryl and Eva, because I know that was the angst that a lot of folks had in our network. And our analysis is that this does advantage community-based programs over school-based programs.
Yeah, and Georgia, you nailed it. That was exactly my point, is as long as the community needs assessment accounts for that, and I would say it may not even be urban, suburban, it might be income-based. There's probably suburban communities that have lower income families who are working different hours.
Yeah.
The divide is probably an income-based divide, not necessarily a geographic one, although those certainly do line up a lot. But I
Right.
guess this is where the community needs assessment, where people really are going to have to participate to ensure that the community-based programs, if people need that and want to keep that continuity, choose to be part of the program and are able to be part of the program.
Absolutely. And when I say, because Connecticut communities align so closely with economics, that's why I just broadly say community-based programs, because we did see during the pandemic how this alignment played out. A lot of those community-based programs in more affluent communities, they lost almost all of their children during the pandemic because those parents had more flexibility in their work schedule, whereas in the urban settings where parents are essential workers, they really needed childcare. And so again, I just use that broadly because again, in Connecticut is so segregated economically that you may see this disproportionately, the advantages disproportionately plays out within communities. But overall, we have concerns about this being delayed funding. We also have questions about the 10% that the OEC is allowed to use, how they're going to use it. But I do want to say to the industry that this is the best case scenario. And our understanding from Beth's presentation is that a disproportionate portion of these fundings are going to be in community-based programs versus center-based program. I forget what the allocation will be, but my understanding, and this could have changed since we spoke, is that a larger percentage of those early start grants are going to be located in community-based programs, which are inclusive of center-based and family childcare providers. Family childcare providers are going to be prioritized, and unlike prior when they could not apply for early start funds on their own, family childcare providers will be able to apply to the OEC on their own for these funds.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Georgia. Meryl, did you want to respond?
Just going back to
You looked
that.
like you wanted to speak, sorry.
Yeah. I'm looking at that bar graph and the text that was off to the right that said, not represented in this graph, model includes funding for 7,500 preschoolers to move from part day to school day. To me, that says that's going to be through the educational cost sharing grant or some other grant within the State Department of Ed. And what that means is that public schools that have been providing a morning pre-K session and an afternoon pre-K session are going to be able to serve half as many children because in the same classroom with the same teachers, because they're now going to get funded to have one school day, school year classroom. Now, they might have extra empty classrooms and they might have teachers who, they no longer need to teach third grade that they can now turn into preschool teachers. But it's every time that somebody has tried to do universal pre-K, what they've always found was public schools don't have enough space to do this all in the public schools, and you need community programs. So if you are not currently an early start contractor, I would suggest that you look carefully at that link that Georgia shared about the state-funded qualified staff and the other issues there, and to start to think about what are the things that would take for you to become an early start grantee. You'll have several years to prepare for this. Nothing is going to happen right away because most of these slots don't get delivered until 2032. So, you start to see new slots coming in 2028 and then 2029, more in 2030 and more in 2031 and 32. So, there's a gradual phase in of all of this.
Someone had asked how many, is it truly universal if it's only serving kids under $100,000 and a family in families, and how many kids actually fall into that? my understanding of these rough numbers is it's basically half. I think it's half the families, and Meryl, you could correct me if you think that's wrong, but based on the census data that we got from, I think you can't get this year because it's not available, but based on the most recent data available, it's something like 65,000 families who earn under $100,000 and roughly 65,000 families who earn over.
So I just pulled the Alice report, and in the Alice report, they have 10.3% of Connecticut's population is below the poverty line. So obviously not even close to $100,000, very low. And then they analyze that 40% of Connecticut households are in poverty. So they're fluctuating above, you know, they're not in the
Below the
care for
Alice.
kids. Yeah, so the best way to explain it, in I guess the simplest terms, is we have almost half of the population of Connecticut is struggling, but they don't qualify for care for kids. So the question mark is, where do they fall in that struggle? Would they qualify for this? We don't have exact numbers of where they would in fact qualify for this, but we do know that this might not be the solution for a lot of people.
Yeah, it looks like it's roughly half. I mean, personally, after working with all of you for all these years and in, thinking about families who are getting assistance in all kinds of ways that are so helpful to them, the idea of one more benefits cliff gives me a giant headache. And so I wish there was something that said, okay, well, it's free under this amount, and then it's this much over time for these various families. I don't love the idea that families have, is it only for working parents also? That was my other question, Meryl. Or if a parent, does one parent quit their job to stay under the $100,000? Can you still be eligible? Or is this for working parents? Was there any designation about that? I want to see fewer parents quitting their jobs to make the whole thing work. This is it. We don't solve that problem, certainly, of women in the workforce.
I don't remember them talking about that, but that's an excellent question.
So
could you quit your job? Because in care for kids, you have to be working.
Is it for working parents, or if you're in school, or, do you have, I'm worried about that aspect, and I haven't seen the answer to that. Meryl, have you seen the answer to that, or anyone else you could put it in that? That's a question I have then. Okay, Eileen is raising a fear. The downside of this plan is the patchwork schedule most children will have. Parents will choose the free 9 to 3 program, which, depending on your community, may or may not be in a community program, could be. And the child will be with family, friends, and neighbors over the summer and after school. The inconsistency of care for the child goes against high quality ECE. Many states have offered UPK, and it did impact the ECE community. And sadly, when funds get cut or tight, families no longer have these options available. I understand that fear, and I think depending on how the community deals with it, that could be true for some families. Is that right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right. We'll take just a couple more questions. I don't want to keep people too long this morning. Someone has a comment. It is happening in other states in programs like this, and it's been detrimental to private community-based providers. It's very difficult, no matter the quality and longevity the family has attended with their provider, to compete with nearly free tuition. It has unintended consequences, and we need to be realistic. And these are great comments to put into the legislative process to say, we really need to ensure that community-based programs won't be left behind in this. So good program, good comment. Let's see, can Elevate liaisons help with preparing staff to move private programs to meet early start requirements to go into the RFP bidding? I don't know if you guys know.
I'd say that's a good place to start and see if they can help. I don't know for sure whether that's, it seems to me that those navigators that OEC has, that's helping you figure out the rules is what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. Okay, we've got, there's a few comments left in the Q&A. I would say that folks, for the comments, I'm going to let you guys read them there. Do we know what's happening with the role of the school readiness liaison given the new local governance councils?
Beth has always said that she wasn't trying to get rid of them, that she actually really needed them. But how it's being funded, I am not entirely sure how that's going to work. Maybe one of the liaisons has heard an answer to that.
Great. If you have heard an answer to that, please put it in the chat. There's also someone, oh, Joanne can talk about that. Joanne, let me let you join us. All right, you should be good to go.
Good morning.
Good
So
morning.
this is Joanne Kelleher. I'm the Executive Director of the Early Childhood Collaborative in Southington. And so as part of the Early Start legislation, the OEC will be forming local governance partners. And their intention is that if a community already has a local collaborative, like mine in Southington, or a school readiness council, that the people involved with those organizations will become the new local governance partner. And in some communities, there's only one or the other. In the communities where there is both a local collaborative and a school readiness council, they're going to have to combine somehow. The local governance partners are supposed to be in effect by July 1st of 2025. And so we've been having lots of meetings to try and figure this out. And we are still waiting for the OEC to get back to us with lots of questions. But as Meryl mentioned before, the funding for Early Start will no longer go through the school district. And so the role of the school readiness liaison will change. There are slides that show what the responsibility of the local governance partner is, and it will be a combination of family outreach, being a liaison to the OEC and helping with this community needs assessment, and then supporting the state-funded programs through the Early Start program. So that's the direction they're heading in. We're waiting on all the details.
Thanks so much, Joanne. I appreciate that. I love that you guys are ready to jump right in. It's fantastic. Thank you. There's a couple questions in here that I would love for folks to answer. If you have the answer, somebody is wondering about the licensing division at OEC. That's a 10 o'clock question. If anybody knows the answer to any of that, you can type it in. Rhonda is curious, in this proposal by the governor, what would happen in a snow day example? And this would be fodder for the kinds of questions you might ask in public hearing. Example, this past Thursday, if you call up a family childcare provider, you get to go. Who pays for that day? Are parents to pay for the full fee with no assistance from Care for Kids? Clarify how this will work. I guess that's both on the proposal, but it's a Care for Kids question also. I don't know if either of you has an answer to that. No.
I mean, it'd be just like if you had a first grader, school's closed, your kid's home for the day. You are on your own to figure out, whether you're taking a day off from work because of that, or you've got somebody as a backup who can watch your kids for the day.
Do you know, and this may be a Joanne question also, will coordinators of each LGP be shared on, I guess, on the state's website or out on the listserv, so that if you're not recruited for the study, you can, or for any other reason, that you can reach out and find who your LGP, I guess, liaison is?
I would hope that the OEC does that. I know that you can currently find a list of who the local collaboratives are on the website of the Connecticut Children's Collective, which is the intermediary between the OEC and the existing local collaboratives. But that is something that I can bring back to our group, and when we meet with the OEC, ask that they do that.
Great, thanks, Joanne. All right, that is roughly it for questions. There's a few that are more commenty, and folks can just go to the questions to read those. And thank you to anyone who has responded in there with comments as well. Ava, I'll turn it over to you. I don't know if there's any last comments or updates, opportunities for hearings, anything else that you want to announce?
I do have updates, but before we go into updates, I agree with the person who asked, can you share the study? So Eileen, you put in into the Q&A that there's a study of UPK and the impact in New York, and it was estimated for every child, this is Eileen's words, for every child, every 7 children that attended school based on UPK, 1 child under 3 loss of space from a community-based program closing. The overall loss of under 3 spaces was 2,700 in 1 New York county. And then Eileen put, I think that the UPK is a great idea, but we need to be careful how it rolls out. Totally agree with that sentiment, but also agree with Angela asking you, can you share the study? So if you can go in there and share the study before we wrap up, that would be great, Eileen, if you're still on. And folks, if we don't have enough time for Eileen to post that study, we will also look in and see if we can find that study and have it for you, hopefully on our next call.
Yeah, and Eileen, you can also email it to info@earlycareconnection.org, and then we can post it on the listserv, or you can post it on the listserv. Either one is fine. Well, and if we get it, we'll include it in the recording from today. Reminder to folks that the recordings are always posted within roughly 24 hours, and if you hit subscribe, you'll get a notice when they're posted. Excuse me. Okay, any other stuff at the legislature this week that folks need to know about?
Yeah. So there are hearings. There are hearings on Thursday, this Thursday. It seems that the Children's Committee specifically is meeting every Thursday for hearings. That seems to be consistent so far in the info that we got from the clerk for the Children's Committee. This week, I had it open and I closed it. This week we have.
Do you want the public hearing agenda for
Thursday the 13th? Okay, I got it open. We have there's an act that's about there's a screening for depression. There's an act about different programs for children. An act maybe this is more up our alley here. Let me be more specific. An act establishing a pilot program to disseminate information concerning child care services, early intervention programs, and financial assistance programs to parents receiving prenatal care. There's an act concerning children's health, an act on early educator pay equity. Do you know more about that one? Who's putting 6899 together?
6899 was one of my suggestions for the committee, that we have a bill around pay equity for early educators between earning, but to make them earn in the same amount as public school teachers. This bill is not likely to be a bill that proceeds along as a standalone bill, but we should use the opportunity to testify on the importance of early educators earning more money. The way this is going to work is there'll be a whole slew of bills about childcare that'll get hearings, and then probably they'll all get merged into one bill that will become the vehicle for the early childhood bill from coming through the committee. So this Thursday, you can come on and testify about the importance of early educators earning more money, and that the state system that is funding early childhood should be paying more. We could talk about it from the perspective of Care for Kids and Early Start.
Eileen did post the name of this study, so we'll see if I can find it also to give to you guys.
Let's grab that. Yeah, I want to see it. Okay. She posted the name, so we have to find it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I got it.
Other acts happening. We have an act concerning the appointment of a child advocate. When I was reading that legislative language, it seemed more DCF. So those who have kids or parents in the foster care system, etc., this might be a good avenue for you to chime in. And then there's an act concerning children's welfare, children's safety, and then school and public library funding, and then the establishment of universal basic income pilot program. So for those who are not familiar for universal basic income, there's been lots of studies in the last 2 decades that people who just get money are better off. Like if you just give people money, they will use it and help themselves to slowly get out of very difficult type positions or even poverty. So rather than this concept that you're constantly creating subsidy this, subsidy that, just give families cash. So the universal basic income was kind of based on that premise, where you're giving families X amount of money a month. And then those families are using that money in order to create better outcomes for themselves. So that's also, a very positive and global view of how to help people who are in crisis. But that's a list of hearings that's happening this Thursday. Reminder that when you sign up to testify for any hearing, there is a due date. So typically you have the cap to sign up is 24 hours before the actual hearing. I highly recommend that if you are interested in testifying, you should do it, sign up today, tomorrow, Wednesday, so that you don't miss the window. I would even say today and tomorrow, so that you don't miss the window. And we can put that on the chat as well. I should have added that.
Meryl, what's your website now? Is it CTECA or is it the other one?
cteca.org.
All right. I am posting also, just as a reminder for everyone, that both the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance and Child Care for CT do offer different kinds of updates on legislative session stuff. So go to their website, sign up for their email addresses if you can, follow on social media. I believe yours, is it CTECA?
Yep.
Okay.
I can't remember right now.
Okay. Vanessa, maybe you could post the social media for the Early Childhood Alliance.
Yep.
Child Care for CT at Child Care for CT on Instagram, Facebook, or X, and YouTube. So follow those, and you can also get information. Vanessa's also posting here about a policy briefing tomorrow, which you can sign up for. We are taking off next week for the holiday. I know a lot of folks have off, and the legislature is closed. So we'll be off next week, back the following week. The topic for the following week.
Kathleen, one of our early care lobbyists out there at the Capitol, is going to be doing a budget overview of the full governor's budget, as well as key components of civic engagement with
Great.
Kathleen Callahan.
Great. All right.
And we have a community meeting for Child Care for CT on Wednesday the 19th.
Great. There's a lot of places on both of these websites where you can sign up to get involved this session. I know Child Care for CT /get involved, or click get involved in the top. Meryl, where would people go if they want to find out stuff from your website? Do you know off the top of your head? Oh, events. Vanessa's great.
Yeah.
She's got it. Okay. So go there, guys. Anything else we need to cover this morning?
On the 20th, that is the public hearing on the OEC budget. So that is the place where the legislature expects to hear from people about what you like and don't like about the budget. So if you look at OEC's budget and you say, there should be a bigger rate increase for early educators, that's the time to talk about it. If you are concerned about a gap in funding for, but from one year to the next, that's the time to talk about it. If you look at that budget and you have questions about something, reach out to me and I can try and get the answers for you.
Can you tell me, Meryl, I'm looking at the calendar right now. There's a Children's Committee public hearing. Is that the one we're talking about?
The Appropriations Committee public hearing.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that one.
On the 20th.
20th?
20th, yes.
It's not on the calendar.
If you look in the bulletin, there's a page that they just don't have the calendar projected out that far yet. But
great. I'll share out the appropriations page, and folks, you can go there to get the agenda and the information.
The commissioner will answer questions, present her budget, and answer questions. They say at 10:30, from 10:30 to 11. I've never seen them actually start the commissioner's presentation. It always takes longer. So sometime in the morning, Commissioner Bai will present the budget, and then at 3 in the afternoon is when the public hearing starts. Now, there will be a ton of people who will testify. at that hearing. So you will need to sign up ahead of time, and then there's a lottery, and at 6 o'clock the night before, on the 19th, they'll tell you what the order is. So we will look through and try and find the folks that we know in that list. But if you want us to be able to send you a reminder, because we'll watch that whole hearing and be able to tell people, okay, there are 10 people before you. It's time to sort of, get yourself over to the computer. Only 5 people now. Sometimes, when you get to 11 o'clock at night, it might be 5 people who don't show up in front of you, and you'll want to be ready to go right away. Ava?
That I want to echo what Izzy started us off with saying at the beginning of this meeting, that this UPK is a proposal. We had about 350 plus people on this call. Imagine a reality where all 300 people on this call registered to testify on this plan. So there's going to come a moment during this session where this plan is going to be on paper, and it's going to be a version of a legislative proposal. And there's going to be plans talking about impacting your lives, your day-to-day. Imagine if we can fill that hearing space with that many people, 350 plus voices, all in unison, explaining what the needs of this community are. So let's not take that for granted. Let's make sure that we're engaged, because this is the year. Like other years, we might be talking about slices and pieces, but this year the stars are aligning where the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate President, they're all paying attention. They're all saying they want to do something for early care and education. So we have to be part of that conversation, and that means showing up.
That's right. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're a minute over, and but it was a great call. We learned a lot. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to Sandra and to all of the folks here who to raise their hand to give clarifying information. So appreciated. We won't see you next week. We will see you the following week. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks so much.